Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. Yes, that's right. It's Wednesday, new product review day. We've got one here that we've been promising for a couple of weeks, and in the co-captain's chair, Mr. Steven Reid, all the way from Scotland. What's happening, my friend? How are you?
I'm good, Peter. Yes, very good indeed. Looking forward to talking about something really quite exciting.
Yes, here we go. Fugazi, the box set. Of course, I don't have the hype sticker because, mine is with the cellophane in the garbage, which has already been gone out to the landfill weeks ago. But yeah, I'm not into the stickers. I know yours is nicely placed right back on the cover.
Exactly where it was on the cellophane, because that's how sad I am.
So here we have this is the second album from neo-prog legends Marillion. Fugazi follows Script for a Jester's Tear, their debut, and it gets this royal treatment. Maybe we should do a little kind of show thing here before we start talking about what's all in here. So, of course, you've got I'll read it to you. Yeah, Stephen, why don't you show? I'll read. So on disc one, we've got Fugazi, the 2021 remix. Also and then on disc two, we've got Live at the Spectrum in Montreal, Canada, from June 20th, 1984, part one, full live show. Disc three, we've got the second half of that. In between, we've got this great booklet, which has all sorts of fantastic photographs from live and in the studio, along with commentary from the band and those around the band talking about the creation of the album. All sorts of cool stuff. Great reading, I might add. But wait, there's more. Disc four, you've got a Blu-ray. So, and did they make this in a DVD version? I don't remember, but I think it's just Blu-ray.
Not sure. I think it's just Blu-ray.
Yeah. So on the Blu-ray, you've got audio and video. So the audio section, you've got the Fugazi album. Okay. You've got the Live in Montreal tracks, extra audio tracks, which are like alternate takes and singles and things like that. We'll go into specifics in a bit. And then the video section, where you've got a couple of documentaries. One, The Performance Has Just Begun, which is just over an hour, which is kind of talking to the guys. I think they taped this in 2020, talking about the making of the album. Fantastic. You've got the story of the songs track by track, which is just over a half hour. You got the promo video to Assassin. And then you've got the live concert for Swiss TV, filmed in 1984, which is roughly 50 minutes long. And that's quite good as well. You got different formats, on the video and the audio for you to mess around with and play. All in all, if you're familiar with the earlier Marillion box sets and certainly the Jethro Tull box sets, you know what you're going to get here. Dynamite stuff. So with that being said, I guess, Stephen, you want to start talking a little. We'll start from the beginning, the remix.
Well, the remix, we've done a ranking the albums of Marillion, the two of us, Peter. Well, we did the top 10 anyway, and Fugazi featured in both of our top 10.
Yep.
But Fugazi, certainly for me, is the Fish era Marillion album that I reached for least. I don't dislike it in any shape or form. Some of the songs on it are outstanding. They're iconic. And they grew into something else entirely live. And Fish in latter years has still gone back to some of those and made them sound as grand and as phenomenal as they were. What I discovered with this is that some of my issues maybe actually come from something that the band touch on a lot in the Blu-ray documentaries, which is that the sound isn't what they would have wanted the album to be. So it would appear that the production by Nick Tauber, is that how we pronounce it? Who'd already been associated with the band. And the mix was presented to Marillion, who kind of went, well, if we could just go and they went, oh no, it's done, that's it finished, that's what's going out. And that suddenly, when I put on disc one here, I can be a bit, with remixes. Sometimes they're fun and they're interesting and you hear things that you haven't before. I tend, given time, to gravitate towards the original versions of albums because that's what I've known, it's what I've grown up with, it's what I tend to love. The mix on this is really good. It's really quite special. Yes, you hear things that you haven't necessarily heard before. I think the vocals on, for example, Punch and Judy suddenly become part of the song. They were a little bit kind of separate, to me anyway, to the music a little bit previously. I think the keyboards and Assassin just suddenly, I mean, they grab you and they hold you and they swirl you around, and they're really quite outstandingly good. Now, the mix is by, I've written it down, Andy Bradfield and Avril McIntosh, the remaster, should I say. And they've done quite a lot of the previous Marillion box sets that have come out in recent times. They've done really good work. This to me, I don't know how you feel about it, Peter, but this to me startlingly good. It's really something different. I genuinely remember putting it on when I first got this, which is a little while ago now, and thought, wow, what am I hearing here? And I know this album really well. And I still kind of thought, whoa, okay, I need to stop what I'm doing and sit down perfectly between the speakers and take this in.
Really listen, yeah. Yeah, it's quite good. And I want to go back to your statement earlier when talking about the first 4 albums. And yeah, I think somewhere along the way, Fugazi has always gotten lost in between the greatness that is Script, Misplaced, and Clutching. And it's funny because in the Prague Seat show that we did recently, where we talked about those 3 great albums in a row from prog bands, it's like I wanted to pick Marillion, but then I'm like, well, do I start at Script, Fugazi, and Misplaced? But I can't leave out Clutching because that's my favorite. And then if I go Fugazi, Misplaced, and Clutching, I love Script so much. So how can I do that? And deep down inside, what I really want to do is take this one out of the equation so I can have the other 3. But now in listening to this and this new mix on it, I realize how much I love these songs, and I do, and how much better they sound now. They're brighter, they're punchier. They're like, wow, this is the way probably the band always intended this album to sound. And it almost makes you think, it's like, wow, this album doesn't take a backseat to any of those other 3, you could arguably say now. Because man, I mean, Assassin is one of my favorite songs from them. Punch and Judy is great. Jigsaw is gorgeous. Right? Emerald Lies, so dramatic. She, Chameleon, Incubus, Fugazi. I mean, this is dramatic. Yeah, right? I mean, yeah, that's a great already. You have it multiple times, right?
I remember your face when I showed you the 7-inch singles when we did Marillion previously. So I thought it would be wrong of me not to do that.
and they show all these on the documentary, which is really cool, right? And it's like, and it reminded me of when we did that show. I'm like, oh man, this, Mark just did such a great job on the artwork to these albums. It's just crazy. And I don't, again, I only ever had this on CD. I never owned this on LP, but watching the documentary and hearing the artist himself tell you about all the little things that are on here, and you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I never quite noticed that before. And oh yeah, that's it, because there's some really intense stuff going on this album cover, and little nods to things here and there that unless you're really looking, you don't even notice, which is pretty neat.
I also loved how, and he covers it too, Mark Wilkinson covers it in the section where he talks about the art, is how this mirrors the Script cover. There are so many calling cards between one and the other, and it's the growth and it's the eras as well, as we're moving from 70s into 80s, and the social differences as well, because Fish was always socially aware, politically aware with his lyrics. That's very apparent on this album as well. Definitely dealing with issues, for want of a better turn of phrase, and that to me, I mean, I've been lucky enough to interview Mark. He's a fascinating and talented guy, who I was basically doesn't get the recognition he probably does, to be fair, in actual fact, and that's a good thing, because not just Marillion, but Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and loads of others too. But hearing not many bands allow these people to come in and kind of talk through what they were doing with the band at that stage, and I really enjoyed that aspect on the Blu-ray as well, because I view Mark's artwork and those, maybe not quite Clutching, which is my favourite out of the 4, but the first 3 albums, his artwork is integral to everything that's going on. The singles, they all tell a story. the logo's phenomenal, and it's just the whole thing felt utterly cohesive, and he gets the credit for that, I think. Although Fish kind of gave him directions and pointers, undoubtedly what he produced has become and remains iconic, I would suggest.
Yeah. And also too, and again, at the time I didn't really realize it, but there are things going on this cover that foreshadow the cover that's going to come with their next album, which I think is pretty brilliant when you think about it, right?
Isn't it?
How many bands would give that much thought, or any artist would give that much thought into that, to have that kind of interconnectivity from album to album, even an album that's not going to come out for another year and a half afterwards. So yeah, pretty cool. And one thing I do want to point out, because they talk about it quite a bit, the band on the documentary, is that they went into the studio and they had nothing.
Yeah,
they had nothing. I mean, they were so busy out on the road, and all the excitement of script and the record label were basically like, all right, we need another album and we need it to be a good one. And they were like, okay, we're out, we're a young band. We get signed to a major label right off the bat. And, they released the live album, recital of the script, right? So it's Reel to Reel they released as a kind of little stopgap, right? But they literally went to the studio with no material, and they came out with all these gems, which you have Reel to Reel. There you go. Yeah, very cool. And yeah, it's interesting to hear from the guys, just kind of like their perception of all that was going on here, because they were all pretty young and pretty green at the time. But before, they're opening up for Rush, they're playing all these big shows, and opportunity is knocking. But this album sold worse than the album that came before. And the record company was not happy about that. And they basically were like, you better deliver something big on your next album, or, we might have to part ways. And that's, of course, that's not what they wanted, right? So, and to hear, and Fish is such a masterful storyteller, and to watch him tell the tales of what was going on at the time, and talking about, in the studio, and there's cocaine everywhere. I had to rewind that like a couple times. I'm like, is he talking about coke? Like cocaine? I've never heard cocaine called cocaine. And he says it multiple times in the video in his, in his accent. And I'm like, oh, that is what he's talking about. Okay, yeah. Well, I do know, obviously, if you know any of the history of Marillion, he especially, I don't know how many of the other guys in the band don't seem like those type of guys, but who knows?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because they don't seem like those kind of guys. They were those kind of guys.
You hear Stephen Rothery talk about how, I would like to get to bed before 11 o'clock. They like to sit in the studio till 3 a.m, and that was never me, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I wonder how true that all is. But maybe he did all that stuff early in the day. Maybe he wanted to go to bed early, but I'm sure none of these guys were innocent, in this time period, because they were all young, and we all know what it's like to be young, and you get influenced by things, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, pretty fascinating stories to hear them all kind of looking back. And I also thought the interesting talking about Mick Pointer's kind of ousting from the band, and how Ian Mosley came into, and how they were scouting Mosley for a while. They wanted him, they saw him playing with Steve Hackett, and they kind of knew he was the guy that they wanted, a little bit older, but he was that guy. And then also the interesting stories about Andy Ward coming into the band, who obviously they looked up to because he was in Camel, one of their favorite bands, and how that didn't work out, and how he came into the band. And he was kind of a mess at the time. And, when you think about it, fine drummer, a really good drummer, actually. Yeah. And you have to wonder, if that marriage had lasted, would he have brought more name recognition to the band because of who he was and where he came from? I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because, as you say, as they went into the studio for Fugazi, there was nothing there. They just went in with, a blank piece of paper.
Yeah,
we have to write an album now. But so much of their time leading up to the album was spent, playing lots of shows, getting on amazing bills, but finding a bloody drummer.
Yeah.
Was so much of what they were doing, because you had that period with Andy Ward, and that seemed to be okay until they realised that at that stage in Andy's life, he was unravelling a little, personal circumstances and a bit of history going on. And then John Martyr joined the band, and John played on the B-sides to Punch and Judy. So you've got re-recordings of Market Square Heroes and Three Boats Down from the Candy, one of my least favourite Marillion songs, Three Boats Down from the Candy, don't like that. Market Square Heroes, love that.
Yeah.
And he did those two songs, and it all seemed to be going okay. And then that didn't happen. Then you got Jonathan Mover, who came into the band, and Fish, in no uncertain terms, as the other members of the band, confirmed that it was a me or him situation.
Yeah.
They just did not see eye to eye. Marillion were trying to write from the heart, write emotional music that moved them. And Jonathan seemed to want to notate it all and come in and say, but guys, you can't do that. It has to be this. And that was always just going to explode, because Fish was quite a volatile chap, shall we say, back in the days, and quite an intimidating chap too. And interesting.
I think Fish's quote was that he was too much of a Simon Phillips type of drummer, and that really wasn't working in our band, right?
Yeah. And then it was interesting that kind of intimidation point was one of the reasons that Ian Mosley could last in the band, because he wasn't intimidated by Fish.
Right.
One of the very few guys that would stand up to him, and I think, and I'm going to misquote because I don't think it was on this documentary, or maybe it was, that the famous kind of altercation between the two, which they both laugh about now.
Yeah, it
if
was.
you do that again, I'll hit you. And Mosley did hit him, and Fisher kind of, oh, hold on. Suddenly, this 6'6" Scots guy that's like this wide has someone that's going to go. And that respect was there. And even as things fell out and fell apart later down the line, those two always still seemed to be able to have some sort of bond as well. But Mosley came to the band with a track record as well, to be fair. I mean, yes, Andy Ward from Camel, I mean, that's a phenomenal record to have. But Mosley had worked with Steve Hackett, and he'd worked with Darrell Way. And his book, Do I Owe You Money, is a great little read. It's all just little stories, and he pieces his life together in not just one kind of narration. It's just little key moments from his musical career more than anything else. It's quite a fascinating read, and an awful lot of it is pre-Marillion, and I kind of thought. But it really shows you the making of the man and the making of the musician, and then it leads up into what he's done ever since, and that it's a good read, and it ties nicely together with this album as well, because Mosley is, much though I'm a Mick Pointer sympathizer, I have to say, Mosley's the making of this band in many ways. And you say, would Ward have brought more cachet? Possibly, but he wouldn't have brought what Ian Mosley did. And that, to me, would be a much bigger loss than maybe of them being able to push their name further forward just that little bit earlier than ultimately happened with Misplaced Childhood. Yeah,
true. So I think we both can agree that the remix is quite good. And I think anybody who is mildly interested in hearing this album the way it should have always been heard, I think deserves to give this a listen. But there's a lot more on here that's a draw, I think. The live concert from the Spectrum in Montreal from 1984 is really good.
Yeah.
You get like the best from both albums on here, which I think is pretty fantastic, right? Plus the single stuff. So I'll list everything off here. You've got Assassin, Punch and Judy, Jigsaw, Script for a Jester's Tear, Chelsea Monday, Emerald Lies, Cinderella Search, Incubus, Charting the Single, He Knows You Know, Fugazi, Forgotten Sons, Garden Party, and finishing off with Market Square Heroes. So 14 tracks. Really good show, really good quality. Not only do you have it on the CDs, but you've got it on the Blu-ray, and it sounds pretty dynamite.
Yeah, the sound of the live show and that's where this was culled from. That's Reel to Reel is taken from this show, and I've always kind of thought, why is that all we got?
Yeah,
it was a stopgap, and it was just one of those things that are going to buy the band time more than anything else. But yeah, hearing it in all its glory, and before, and said as a massive Marillion fan, before they kind of went a little bit too far, when you hear some of the latter live shows and they're kind of throwing in kind of throwaway rock and roll covers or snippets of and various things, that always confused me, because it didn't feel and sit right with the set. But I think the set at this stage is just, there's no fat. It's just great song after great song after great song, and
Yeah.
some of the underappreciated moments, like charting the single, which was just a B-side from He Knows You Know. Oh, I mean, in a live setting, it just becomes something else, and you think, why wasn't that on an album? Well, probably because there just wasn't room more than anything else
Room.
to
Yeah.
put it on an album. But the live show really, really, you know, encapsulates everything that was great about the band at the time. You had a charismatic frontman who was capable of whipping an audience into a frenzy over prog rock, which not all frontmen can do. Some can, some can't. Fish definitely did at this stage. But the level of musicianship and the chemistry between the five of them, but specifically the four guys with the instruments in their hands, is off the charts good.
Yeah.
It's really, do you know, this is, and I wouldn't say the band at the peak of their powers, because I like Marillion right through to the present day, and I've seen them live, I don't know how many times, a lot of times, and they bring it every single show. I think in all of the, however many I've seen, there's been one night I walked away thinking, yeah, they were only great tonight, they weren't fantastic. All other times they've been fantastic. But a real regret is that I never saw that lineup, because I didn't. And you hear shows like that and you go, man, I missed out. I really missed out.
I think I've told you the story before, but I had the opportunity to see them on the Misplaced Childhood tour. They actually played at a small rock club, the rock club that we always talk about, the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, when I was in college. And I remember some of my friends who were, had no idea who they were, right? They're like, oh, we're gonna go see Marillion at the Chance. You know, they've got that new album out, and you know, the hit single. And I'm like, who? Like, you want to go? And I'm like, nah, I think I'll stay home, get drunk, and listen to Slayer and Metallica or whatever. So they went, and I got to hear for weeks how great it was. And it's funny how on Facebook recently, I'm still friends with a couple of them. They were talking about that concert all those years ago, and I'm like, oh, one of my big regrets is that I never listened to you guys and went with you to that show, because literally 10 minutes away, right?
We have similar experiences, because a school friend of mine, because that's the age I was when Clutching at Straws came out, two of my mates bought tickets to go and see Marillion. And back then, I'm not bang on with the years, but I was mid-teens, not working, not earning, working off pocket money or whatever my parents were kind enough to throw my way. And I was going to see Halloween and Kiss and Iron Maiden. And I mean, you look now, I mean, all my concert tickets are sitting over there, but you look back, you know, it was like a massive show was £12. What I'd give to go and see some of the bills that I saw for that sort of money.
Yeah.
Back then, I mean, if you went to like one show a month, I mean, you had no money. That's because you came back with a T-shirt and whatever it may be. So you looked at it and you thought, well, who do I want to go and see? And I thought, I'll catch Marillion next time. And I did, because I saw them on the Season's End tour, and I saw Fish on the Vigil tour.
Right. Yeah.
But I never saw
them
the
together.
two together. And it's not going to happen now. And even if it did, it wouldn't be the same now. So, you know, but yeah. So yeah, we both have regrets over that.
Yeah, we do. But you know, in the documentary, Fish talks about how this band really, really gelled live, and he talks about how the albums are great, but they're a little tepid compared to how these songs came out live. And he says it a couple of times in the video. And you listen to these recordings from Montreal, and you can hear that these are great songs anyway in the studio, but live, I mean, there's just this sense of drama and power that you get live, and Rothery's guitar tone, and the keyboards are brighter. And then, you know, Fish obviously on stage, he's just so good. And, you know, this is before he started having vocal problems. So he sounds amazing on these recordings. Really, really good.
Yeah. And I mean, the remix as well of the album itself, when you hear moments where like stand straight,
yeah,
in Jigsaw, I mean, it raises the hairs, doesn't it? It's powerful. As you say, it's dramatic, but it's such a good vocal from a guy who has never really quite had that acclaim as a great vocalist. He's a fantastically phenomenal storyteller.
Yeah,
writes poetry and conveys it with so much emotion and heart. But back then, oh wow, what a voice! Yeah. And he was bringing that every night, and you can understand. I mean, especially now when you go and see him, and I mean, they're kind of dropping keys in songs. No bloody wonder, because I mean, some of the keys that he's hitting night after night here, for a guy who was not a trained singer, is insane. But the power in the live material on this set is incredible. I also really enjoy those moments where they pull it right back in. there's moments where it's like keys and around the kit, and you just get that sense of foreboding that if you were standing at a gig, you would close your eyes and you'd be transported to another world entirely.
Especially on the title track, right? I mean, that's a perfect example. It's chilling. It's like, wow, this is so powerful and so moving and ominous at the same time. Yeah, it's great stuff. Great stuff. So yeah, I mean, again, another reason to get this set is for the full live set. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. And you have the CDs, you can go bring in the car wherever you go. And then if you want to plop it into your home theater system and, put it up on, with your surround sound system on the TV or whatever, you've got the tracks on the Blu-ray as well. So let's move over to the Blu-ray. So we've got the full album. And it's in various presentations. You got 96/24 stereo, DTS HD, Master Audio 5.1, blah 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 blah. So depending on what your system can handle, you've got a few choices there. Like we mentioned, the documentaries are really good.
Yeah,
and they're all in HD and fantastic. And they throw in the Assassin promo video, and I believe that's even remastered. I believe. But they talk about the video in the documentary. They talk about how there was coke all over the studio during that, and they're all high as a kite while they're recording it, and it's really slick. And I get the impression that they look back on that and they're kind of like embarrassed by the whole thing because it just doesn't look like something that Marillion would do. But record companies and all that kind of stuff, they're obviously pushing that. And then you've got the extra audio tracks, which are kind of cool. You get demo versions of a few songs, alternate mixes. You got the extended single of Cinderella Search. That's all good stuff to have. And then you got the live concert for Swiss TV, which I think is really, really cool. It's pretty good. I'd say the video is pretty good on it. And then you got a little interview with the band in the dressing room before they go on stage, which is pretty interesting. So you've got the interviewer who goes and he's talking in Swedish, right, whatever, and then he goes and talks in English, and he asks these like totally ridiculous questions, and it's mostly Fish who's answering them, and it's pretty humorous. It's pretty humorous.
The word that I wrote down.
What's that?
The word that I wrote down for it was excruciating.
Yeah.
I find it quite painful. There are what I love about Marillion is the drama. In the music, on stage, and also off stage, because I want to hear it, I want to know it. And the documentary, I think the first in the series was Misplaced Childhood. The documentary in that one is the only one where it brings the five of the classic era lineup, if we want to say that. I'm sure I've upset Hogarth fans. And they sit behind the mixing desk in those classic album kind of show kind of way. And I like those shows. And Fish dominates that conversation. Fish speaks and they all go. And you think, even all these years later, he dominates proceedings in that sense. And watching that little interview snippet before they go out on stage in Zurich, I mean, the questions are garbage for a start. The questions are terrible. I mean, it's a young girl who's basically been given a microphone and go and ask them questions. And she's going, who are they? Who are they? Music songs, yes. And it's all been translated backwards and forwards, probably into French, I would imagine. And it's all just, but I think is it Mark Kelly or Steve Rothery, I can't remember which, try to kind of get themselves in on some of the, because we're here too. It's not just the big.
It was Rothery. Yeah, it was Rothery, because otherwise Fish is answering everything. He's just sitting back and he's just like. And
Rothery tries to answer some of the questions, and even the girls kind of go, "No, it's him I want to talk to," And it's like, but it shows that dynamic. It shows that even there, we're only pre-album number 2 at that stage. And it shows even then that tension's beginning to get there, that, the big guy at the front with the face paint that's writing all these lyrics and telling all these stories. And as you watch that show, it's one of the highlights of the whole set for me is that show. He's living every lyric. He lives every single lyric, and he's continued to do that all the way through his career. And it makes it a compelling watch. You can't take your eyes off him. He's such a force on stage, such a presence on stage, so much charisma on stage, that even though you've got real fantastic musicians playing ridiculously good songs. You can't take your eyes off the man, and the camera loves him.
Yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
camera absolutely loves him, you
Yeah.
know, and he's still talking shite between songs because that's what he does.
That's what he
If you're going to
does.
go and see Fish, you're
He's
going to
got,
listen
he's
to a
got
lot
the
of chat.
makeup on, you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he's got the bandana, and he still had hair back then. So
Well,
yeah,
the bandana's already suggesting that he's doing what I'm doing at that stage, you know. If I ever come up with a bandana on, you know why. But yeah, that to me, the video footage as it would have been back then, which is not bad considering the age of it.
yeah, yeah.
That's the real section for me that I think, yeah, I'm going to go back and watch this a lot. And I have already watched it 5 or 6 times. It's just so good.
I've watched it a couple myself, and it's just under an hour, so it's not that long. So you get, in addition to the interview, you get Assassin, Punch and Judy, Jigsaw, Cinderella Search, Incubus, Garden Party, and Market Square Heroes. Yeah. And you know, it's not in front of a big audience. I don't know,
just a club show.
Say, but they're pretty into it. They're pretty into it.
Yeah, and Fish manages to absolutely control that audience because it is kind of a lo-fi shoot. You know, it's a club show. It's just for TV, and it is back in the 80s. It's all kind of low camera angles, and you see hands and things in the camera shot and various things. He is orchestrating that crowd from start to finish. He has them there, you know, and that's a powerful thing that many bands would sell their soul for. And you can see why, because he just elevates what is already outstandingly good and just takes it up just that little notch, just by being able to, and you know, live all of it. You know, he absolutely is inside the songs in that sense. So yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect. And I think as well, what has struck me, I think there's still 2 to come. Am I right? So we still don't have Season's End. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is the first one I bought, so I don't have any of the others. I went to go get the Misplaced Childhood, and that's really expensive if you can find it. Did they release clutching on this in this version?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, God, I should have gotten that. So, and how about Script? Has Script come out?
It's out.
Oh, so I missed all of them. Jesus.
Missed all of them, Peter. Yeah. I think there's 8 in total. So 4 Fish and 4 Hogarth is what you've got. And I think there's 2, because this is now out of sequence. They went Fish, H, Fish, H, Fish, Fish.
Gotcha.
It's what they've done. Now, somebody would please correct me if I'm wrong, because the rest of them are in a different room. I think we've still got Season's End and what followed it? Oh my goodness. That is terrible. Holidays in Eden.
Holidays in Eden.
That's the 2 that are still to come out of the set. And what you've got as you follow these documentaries through is the band themselves are giving you the definitive history of Marillion.
Yeah.
So for fans, I would suggest, and I'm sorry if these are expensive, Peter, I would suggest it's priceless, because the Jethro Tull ones obviously come through the same label and the same books, which are really things of beauty. And some of the Tull ones, I mean, there's even more of the actual, you know.
Yeah, the Tull books are like almost 100 pages long. I mean,
and that's not quite so long here, but the content is still well worth reading. But what those lack is that band input.
Yeah.
In the sense that the 6 or 7 members of Marillion across this period, because Script has Mick Pointer in the documentary, so he can tell you his story. He was found a member of the band, Sell Marillion, and so on we go. And then through Fish, and then through, I think even Dis Minutes maybe mentioned. Anyway, there's all the guys that matter throughout this period get to say their piece.
Yeah.
And hearing that from the band themselves, but not contained into, well, you know, we've got 90 minutes to play with. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through the early days, tell you all about what really made the band, and then run through what happened afterwards, as most of these documentaries tend to do. You get a dedicated hour to 70 minutes of this was the time, this was what happened, this was how they got there, and this is what the music meant to us.
Yeah.
Or what it didn't at the same time. And that is absolutely fascinating as a fan of the band, the journey that takes you through those documentaries. I will, when we have them all, actually sit down and watch, maybe not all in one sitting, because you're going to have 8, 9, 10 hours. I will watch them in the order of the albums as opposed to the order of the releases, and hear the definitive story of Marillion up to
album by album, right?
And they're the gold for me in that sense. And there are, partly because of COVID, but partly because of just they wanted to do something different, they're all presented in a slightly different way. There are some that have all the band together behind a mixing desk. So that's one with fish and one with each, depending on which album we're talking about. There are others where they sit separately. So you hear stories from different points of view. And there's not that kind of, I'm talking, so you'll be quiet.
Yeah.
Do you know? And it builds different, aspects of it too. Fascinating. So, I mean, I've gone a little off track because we're here to talk about Fugazi, but the whole reissue set has been done with that care. The only criticism I'll have is that for people who have these reissues of the Marillion albums, not all of the bonus content that's on these reissues appears on these.
Yeah.
I think that's licensing issues and money and various things like that too. So you can't, in my humble opinion, you can't buy this to replace this.
Right, you got to keep that. Yeah.
You got to keep that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to do that anyway. I've got a pre-remix version, I've got a vinyl version, I've got all these bloody singles that are sitting here, and then I bought this and then I bought that, and not everyone is as dedicated.
Not everybody has the curse.
Not everyone has the curse.
Yes.
So I would suggest, if you want one, it really has to be this, because of everything else that's there. The live content, the documentaries, it takes it over the top for me. It's so good.
Yeah. So my journey into the curse is now going to be trying to track down the other ones at somewhat of a decent price. Yeah, good luck with that, right? Because I waited too long. That's the thing. You were talking to me about these like a year ago, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But then I saw this. This was, I think, the only one that came out where I was kind of alerted to it when it came out, when you can buy it at a normal price of like, $40 US or whatever I paid for this. So yeah, but the other ones, I think it was already a little too late, and I was like,
the way they've been released. Sorry, the way they've been. On you go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the way they've been released, you see, has been slightly understated, and the reason for that is that, and I didn't do it because I would need to get both.
Yeah.
You could have bought it directly from Marillion, or you could have bought it directly from Fish. So you get certain things or prints and various things signed by whoever it is you've ordered it from. Now, I would need to have bought both and get signatures by all. So I must admit that I took the path of least resistance and just didn't get a signature one at all. So the pre-order campaigns have launched early so that people can order them from the band or from Fish. And they have worked together on all of these, and obviously with H on the ones that are post-Fish, so that fans can choose what they want, or both, or not, or whatever it may be. And I do quite like that, although I'm sure EMI are getting their cut. I do quite like that, going direct to the band, and hopefully they're maybe getting a little bit more for what you're buying in that sense. So because of that, there's been quite a lot of them snapped up before they've then gone on general release. And then from there, they haven't done a huge amount of them, so they become very scarce quite quickly. And all concerned, including the label, have stated that this will not happen again, that this is a final reissue. Now, we've heard these stories before.
Oh, we certainly have. Look at all the number of times we bought these, right? So yeah, we've heard this before.
Absolutely. But what I will say is I'm beginning to get to a stage where, okay, there's stuff here that's not here. But I am beginning to get to a stage where I think there can't be much left.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and I think these type of box sets, and I'm looking at the Jethro Tull benefits sitting right in front of me. I mean, to me, these type of things, this is the best you're ever going to get here, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to go out and buy a Marillion documentary about Fugazi, well, it's here.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go out and buy, a very short book on Fugazi, well, it's here. If you wanted to say, do you know what, I've always wanted to hear that full show that Reel to Reel came from, well, that's here too. But if you wanted some video of the band live at the time from a Swiss TV show, well, that's here as well. And if you wanted to hear all of that with, I think, the original mixes on the Blu-ray, but also alongside a brand spanking new remaster, well, that's here as well.
Yeah.
So we are getting to a stage where I think anything that would possibly come after, because we know what labels are like, it certainly can't surpass this, I don't think. So we're at the stage that, and as you say, we might be spending quite a lot of money to go and get these things now. If you want them, we're at that stage where this is really where you should be getting them.
Yeah. Yep. So that being said, have we left any stone unturned on this?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. There you have it, everybody. Fugazi, the best it's ever going to get. And it's pretty damn good. This is a really good set. This is really good. So these just came out, so you should still be able to get these in most places, right? Fairly easy to get. I highly recommend it. I believe I got mine from Mr. Ken Golden, frequent guest on In the Prog Seat over at lasercd.com. Go check it out. While you're at it, get the Jethro Tull benefit too, because that just came out as well. So
I'm still waiting for mine to arrive, but yes, yeah,
cool. Yeah, I haven't even dived into that one yet. It's sitting here. I wanted to get fully immersed in this over the last couple of weeks, and now that we've done this, that's my next bit of business, is jumping into benefit. So yeah. So thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. Go out and check out Fugazi, the box set, the ultimate deluxe edition. It's a really, really good one. So visit us on the web at www. We don't have a review of that up yet, do we? I'm sure that's in the works, right?
No, I haven't, but I can get one up quite quickly in actual fact. So yes.
Yeah. So look for that on the website, www.seaoftranquility.org. Also visit us on Facebook and Twitter. But we're here on YouTube
all the damn time.
That's right. For Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. We'll see you all real soon. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell. We've also got links below to our merch site, as well as our Ko-Fi page and our web scene celebrating 20 years on the internet this year. So thanks for watching, everybody. For Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Take care. Bye-bye.